Afternoon, my friends. It's 2 o'clock on Monday afternoon. How are you doing today? So I have an idea that if you had an appointment set up to talk to a pastor today, we probably would have begun with talking a little bit about some of what's happening in your world and in mine. The crisis, I'm going to call it and say it right up front because it's the way I would label it. And it's what I want to talk about in this next installation of the discovery time, the Epiphany time. This is the season of Epiphany. I am Pastor Lou Kilgore, and I'm offering my time here. I'm dressed very casually today because in all the rest of my work for today, I'm trying to take a day off. But I wanted to be able to have a full week of pastors' chats and to talk a little bit today and to be present with you today, just as a ministry of presence, to be with you and to have some sense that we are together. So, the word epiphany comes from, I think it's a Latin word, it may be a Greek word, I think it's Latin, and it means to be led to the light. You have this image of something that's in the darkness and you can't see it, but epiphany work is what brings something out of the dark and shines a light on it. And I've been thinking about it in this season as something new, something that you've learned, something that you didn't know before, and that knowing it now changes some things. So in this week of January 2021, when the COVID virus is so well worn in terms of our talking about it, but it would fade out of our interest, I'm sure, if it weren't for the fact that it is so ragingly out of control. And the difficulties of getting the virus out are, I mean, they're typical to massive amounts of people having to be organized into some kind of a structured program. Oh, excuse me. So there is that. There is thousands of people died of this virus yesterday, and thousands will die today, and thousands will die tomorrow, and it becomes easy to just sort of get used to hearing it. I mean, that's news that used to shock me. It used to scare me. It used to like shake my timbers. Now I hear it every day. I read it every day in the paper, and I sort of give it a head nod to acknowledge. I know that's happening. I have no idea how to put that into a frame of reference in my own life. I have friends, family members. There was someone posted a question on among my Facebook friends the other day to say, do you know anyone that's been affected by the virus? And I think they were halfway trying to check to see that because it hadn't affected them personally, like, does it really exist? So I quickly wrote back and said yes. And the second part of their question was how? So I said, well, my mother died of COVID. It was the COVID virus that compromised her body and caused her death. I have a pastor friend who was in ministry just 15 miles from here, who I was part of installing him and calling him here, setting him up in his life. He was underway in a new pastorate in a wonderful way of getting his feet on the ground, and he is gone. He's dead. He died of the COVID virus. I have family members that have been hospitalized in very scary, compromised positions. I have other family members and friends of family that have gotten very sick. And I have family members and others who've had the virus and did not get sick and counted themselves very lucky. I am signed up to get my vaccination as soon as I can. I'm waiting. I'm signed on to the state website. If you don't know anything about what I'm talking about, when the newsletter comes out tomorrow, there'll be information in there. You can go. New Jersey has a COVID website. You put your name, information, age, and then that puts you on the list so that as soon as you are in the eligible group, they'll notify you, and then you should be able to find by that time a place where you can go to and get the first round of your vaccine. So I don't like it. I don't like what I'm going to say is what I think is a part of the requirement of life with God, walking on this earth. But I still think it's worth renewing in this season as something that we bring back out into the light. You cannot live if you do not trust. And I think that in the world we live in, and I think I can say this no matter what side of the political firefight you see yourself on, whether close to the fire or back in the background, we are living out a crisis of trust. And in my reading of the Bible, I think it's very important. If you know me at all, you know that as a pastor, I try to link religious language with everyday language so that when we talk about our faith, we're using the same kinds of words with a reference of meaning that we have when we talk about the rest of our lives. And one of the unfortunate meaning separations that has happened in our language is that we have substituted trust and faith as if they are two different things, especially when we talk about faith in God. The capacity to trust God. It's not, most of the biblical narrative doesn't really spend a lot of time discussing whether God exists or not. I mean, for most of the writers of the Bible, that question was, it was just, there would be no reason to ask it. It would be like asking if water exists. And yes, there are those that have asked that. The concern of the writers and the experience of the faithful and unfaithful and all the rest of it has been trust. Do you trust God? And which God do you trust? But the challenge of faith is about trusting God. And Jesus said, I think I can make this analogy. Jesus said that maybe the greatest calling of a life worth living is to love God. And then Paul did the kind of thing, or Jesus did the kind of thing that I really celebrate. And that is, you might say, well, what does it mean to love God? And Jesus said, you cannot give meaning to the phrase, I love God, unless you apply it to, I love my neighbor. You cannot say, I love God and hate your neighbor. You cannot say, I trust God, but I absolutely do not trust anything else in this world. To me, the whole discussion about the the national election is about trust. It's about trust. I don't like having to trust in order to live, but you have to trust. At some point you have to say, I trust that 50 million people in 10,000 different situations throughout the United States were not coordinated enough to be able to systematically overturn the will, not just of Democrats, but of Republicans. I trust the system. I trust the system. And as I started out by saying, look, there are a lot of systems I argue with, and I will wrestle and fight and argue all along the way. But in the end, I trust the electoral system of our nation. I trust it when my candidate wins, and I trust it when my candidate loses. Not just on the national level, but on the local level. I was thinking about this whole idea, and it came rushing back to me when I was in high school. At the junior prom, I was dating just really, it was a high school sort of casual relationship, and this woman was not really very popular, and I certainly wasn't in the popular circle. I was doing okay in high school, but I asked her to go to the prom with me. And she had her own group of friends, and I'm telling this as a confession, okay? I didn't really organize it, but I did participate in it. There was an election that took place for the queen of the prom. And there had been a process that had been developed over the years, and it was a popularity contest. And so who was going to be prom queen was the result of a general election among the juniors because it was a junior prom. And I found out through another friend that there was a plan underway that we were going to get the girl that I was taking to the prom, they were going to get her elected as prom queen. And how they were going to do it was they were going to stuff the ballot box. They were going to really stuff the ballot box. And so, I mean, I don't know how many times I voted for her. Somebody was at the control that we knew and had made way for this. Somebody had opened the door for this to happen. And so, the night came, junior prom. I'd spent a lot of money on my tux and her flowers and on the prom ticket. And not too far into the prom, they wanted to hold everybody, stop the dancing, and they announced that the winner of the contest to be prom queen was in fact the woman that the young girl that I was dating, that I had brought to the prom. And I knew it was a fraud. I knew it was. I wasn't even really all that invested in her winning because, quite frankly, and I've said this, I said this at the time, I've not really talked about this much since it happened. It's been a few years ago. When your girlfriend wins queen of the prom, it ruins your night. Like when you're the escort to the queen of the prom, your night is over. Because it's not a normal night. I mean, I don't know what a normal night at the prom is anyway, but it's not a normal night. So I'm telling you all this partly because it's just popped into my brain. I don't want you to think that I'm naive. When I talk about trusting, I don't want you to think that in the world in which I live in that I somehow am well, we can say the word Pollyanna. A lot of younger people don't know the film Pollyanna, but a rose-colored glasses optimist kind of person. I have a fair amount of that, but that's not really what I'm talking about when I'm talking about trust. pistuo in the Greek. Trusting God, trusting our women and men who are our colleagues in life, having the ability to trust. And it's a decision that you make. It's not something that you just, oh, I'm a trusting person. That makes you a gullible person. But the decision to trust, to say, I will trust, I will have faith. I will have faith in God. I will have faith in life. I will have faith in, and someone said on the bumper sticker, trust and then verify. I like that. I like that. I like that even in description of our relationship to God. Trust and then verify. Don't just let somebody come along and tell you about God and what God is like and what you have to trust about God. There's nothing wrong with verification. That's why we talk about the scriptures. Go read the witness of other people and make sure you read it correctly, not the manipulated parts of it. Trust in God. Trust in God in all of your ways is also about trusting the process. Trusting the process. In years past, I have lived through elections in my life where candidates, I was very passionate about what I thought would be good that would happen if the candidate that I was in favor of won, and I was very passionate about what I thought would be the terrible things that would happen if my candidate had lost. But when the candidate that I believed in and lost, they lost. God is still in control of the world. I still trust the processes of life that I think help us to have good, fair life together. Now, I know my life is different than my African American brothers and sisters, because a lot of my sisters and brothers in the black community, in the brown community, have never seen the system work for them. They have never seen it work. And for many of them, they are despondent. They do not trust the systems of this government or of this generation. They don't. I understand that. And I'm not saying that means they don't believe in God. But it's the same muscle. It's the same muscle, the ability to trust. In their lives, many of them have lived through disappointment after disappointment. But they still trust that God will somehow use what happens to bring about, ultimately, God's will in the world. They trust. They trust God. They trust life. They trust gravity. They trust justice. They trust the presence of truth, that it will eventually be its own vindicator. It's the season of Epiphany, and we need to bring out, I think, from the shadows that wisdom leads us ultimately to exercise the muscles of trust. Not blindly, but essentially. And without faith, see, faith and trust? Without faith in God or our sisters and brothers in this world, you will not live, you will not find a life that is anchored in the peace of Jesus Christ. Now, I know there are some pretty deeply held traditions of teaching the faith of Christianity that tell you that faith in God has nothing to do with faith in the systems of this world. In fact, they construct these massive systems of escape because they have no trust in the systems of the world, of government, police, or anybody. They don't trust anybody ultimately. And when things don't go the way they think they should, and they don't really have the ideas all that worked out, they're always ready to go home with Christ. They're always ready to be taken off the earth. They're always ready to say the prayer, come Lord Jesus. just come. This is a mess. It's never going to be right. It's never going to work. Justice is never going to be seen in this world. So, beam us up, Scotty Jesus. It's insane down here. I'm not one of those Christians. I am this world Christian. I am. My faith, the reason I take that stand about trying to link our language in life with the language you use in general population is because I think that's what comes with an incarnational faith. Living faith in this flesh, in this world, God endorsed and accepted and engaged in this life, in this world, in you and in me and in the governments we create and in the systems of the courts and of the processes of the distribution of the wealth of the earth that comes to us. This is what it means to be incarnational. And in order to live an incarnational life, you have to trust. You have to have faith. So, on the first day of this week, as we take another step into the journey of Epiphany, what is the light that got turned on that the Magi saw? What did they see when they looked at Jesus? A child, a human child, in whom they placed a tremendous amount of faith and hope for good news to all the world. That's Epiphany, my friends. So I pray for you that you will be able, more than anything, to have faith, to trust, and to walk today and tomorrow with Jesus. And let that trust guide how you live your life, like a light that would shine in a dark world. God bless you, my friends. I'm glad to be with you today. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same bat channel right here at around 2-ish. God bless you.